Hello, and welcome back to Bombchu. I'm Austin.
And I'm Chris.
And today we'll be taking a look at the Humble Choice bundle from March 2020. Here in the US, we're losing an hour this weekend to daylight savings time, so there's no time to waste. Let's dive in and see what's inside this month.
This month's Humble Original is Space Routine, a space family life simulator from developer Meanit Games. Space Routine has players taking control of a family living in a cartoony, Jetsons-inspired space setting, and attempting to guide them through their day-to-day routine. There's 2 adults with jobs to do, a child who needs to do well in school, and a baby that has to be monitored by an adult or left at daycare. Players can swap between each of the family members as you move them around the environment towards their goals. Playing this game is kind of a nightmare. It's like trying to manage a family in The Sims, but without being able to see more than one small area at a time, and no way to automate their actions at all. Not to mention, this game just feels like busy work. The settings and aesthetic is charming enough, but there's no substance to it. I felt no satisfaction trying to wrangle these characters around, and without that basic gameplay loop satisfyingly scratching any kind of itch, there's just nothing else to this game. At least it didn't take up a choice slot, but I definitely won't be playing any more of Space Routine.
This month we got a sneak peek demo for One Step from Eden. This is a deck-building roguelite. Damn, that's kind of becoming a full-on genre now, isn't it? But it's action-oriented and it takes place on a grid. If you're familiar with the Mega Man Battle Network series, you'll immediately notice some big similarities. Your cards are loaded in at random and attached to your A and B buttons. You have to have enough mana to use any given card, and mana regenerates over time. If you're low on mana, you can hold down your attack button to do a free weak attack as much as you want, in order to get a little extra damage in while you wait for your mana to come back. When you use up all your cards, you hit a button to reshuffle your deck, and you keep going until you or your opponents are dead. Afterwards, you'll earn experience and pick a reward. You can play around on the field to get a handle on whatever new card you got, and when you're ready, you get to go down a branching path in the style of Slay the Spire, with all paths eventually leading to the boss. It's pretty fun, but it's very hectic, and I have a really hard time keeping up with all the action while also paying attention to what random abilities have been attached to my buttons at the moment. I had similar trouble with Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, and I just don't think I can handle action card games. If it's your thing though, it comes out March 26th. Etherborn is a gravity-bending puzzle platformer game. Gravity pulls you wherever you're walking on the ground, so to transition to a wall, a ceiling, or back to the floor, you'll have to walk over curved surfaces. Once you're on the wall, gravity is on that wall. If you walk off the side, you won't fall back to the floor, you'll fall sideways until you land on something, or go forever into the abyss. You'll use this to your advantage to solve puzzles, usually looking for these white objects to place on panels to activate a new path. It's a simple set of mechanics, but I found it got mind-bending very quickly. It felt like just the right level of difficulty for me, with solutions not being immediately obvious, but also never leaving me feeling stuck for very long. This is another short one, only running a couple of hours, but I quite enjoyed it. It's got a relaxing atmosphere, and it's paced so that you can take your time to enjoy the visuals and the music while you figure out your next move. If you like puzzle games or calm atmospheres, I'd say give it a try. If you need a little more action in your games, maybe drop this one.
AI War 2 is a strategy RTS game from developer Arson Games. AI War 2 puts players in control of a single planet in a galaxy that has been overrun by a vicious and sinister AI. Players are tasked with expanding and upgrading their fleet of ships, constructing buildings and tech research on their home planet, and attempting to explore and take back planets from the AI. Gameplay is more simplified than it might appear at first glance. There's no need to control individual ships, with most if not all of the offensive combat being able to be tackled by controlling your entire fleet at once. Resource management is mostly passive, and as long as you aren't losing any planets or bases, is more there to keep you at a certain pace of expansion than anything else. However, AI War 2 is still incredibly complex. Going through the game's 5 tutorials took me almost an hour, and my eyes glazed over and I lost all ability to focus quite a few times. You definitely need to complete them all, however, as almost every screen of AI War 2 throws a lot of information at you all at once. Mousing over just about any object or menu item presents you with a wall of text, explaining what that thing is, what it's doing, resources it's consuming, and even more information than any sane person might possibly need. Moving your ships around from planet to planet is fairly simple, and having them attack different targets is pretty easy as well. The difficulty, however, lies in just about every other aspect of the gameplay. Trying to grasp what you're capable of doing and how to actually do it is going to keep a lot of people from being able to even attempt getting into this game. I enjoy strategy games, and even I was having a lot of trouble keeping up with all of the systems in AI War 2. However, there's a lot to this game that's really intriguing. The AI awareness system is definitely the most interesting feature. Many of the offensive actions you take against the AI-controlled planets will raise the AI's awareness of the player. Raising their awareness level causes them to behave in different ways to try and counteract your attempts to take control away from them. It makes the AI feel truly intelligent in their responses. For example, if you try and rush through too many planets at once, the AI awareness will rise up quickly, and they'll start dumping resources into opening a wormhole to your home planet and attacking while you're not there to defend. It seems like a simple enough system, but for anyone who's played a lot of strategy games like Civilization or Total War, the ability for the enemy AI to adapt and respond in a way that actually works is a refreshing thing to see. AI War 2 is an incredibly daunting beast of a game to try and tackle, especially if you aren't a fan of strategy games. If that's not your genre, this game isn't going to change your mind, so you might want to skip it. However, if you've ever thought the AI in games like Civilization or Total War were too easy, and don't mind a lot of tutorials and supplemental readings on mechanics, AI War 2 has a lot of intriguing features. If I can manage to get a handle on the gameplay, I can see myself spending some more time with this one.
Niffelheim is a 2D action survival RPG. Y'all know I'm not a survival guy, but I tried to go into this game with an open mind, and while I did not like it, I was surprised by what I did and didn't enjoy. Let's start with what I did like. Foraging in the world was surprisingly straightforward. It wasn't a pain in the butt to figure out how to craft things or to find the materials I was looking for. Your base has predetermined spots for making things like an alchemy lab or a forge, and I liked not having to worry about where to put the crafting station I was being asked to craft. Also, dying is not super punishing, and you just lose your money instead of all your items and equipment, which is a good thing because if you get badly hurt, you walk so slowly. And if you don't have healing items or food, your only option to stay alive is to walk to the nearest chair to sit and rest, which is usually too damn far away to be worth walking this slowly. I guess we're transitioning to what I don't like. Movement sucks. Moving in any direction, you start off slow, then break into a run, and when you let go to come to a stop, your character just keeps running for almost a full second, making you pass by whatever you were planning to interact with. Combat is kinda wonky if you're using a melee weapon, and I spent a good amount of time gathering materials to make a shield so I could have a bit more strategy than whack them till they die, but holy crap, I still take so much damage when blocking with the shield, and this thing has terrible durability. There are dungeons to explore, but they are dreadfully boring, with lots of dead-end paths and random poison gas all over the place. The mission system also appears to be buggy. I completed a mission I didn't know I had, got the reward, and then was given the mission to do. Another time I was just walking in a cave and got a really random mission prompt that had nothing to do with what was going on. If you really like survival games and the art style doesn't bother you, you may find something to enjoy here. But I feel like there are other games out there that do this better. If you don't like lots of grinding, crafting, or survival games in general, I don't think this game will change your mind. "1980X" tells a story about a teenager in the 80s trying to figure out where they fit in, as they discover the wonders of the arcade. You're taken through arcade games of different genres, each short but polished, and doing an excellent job of feeling and playing authentically like the games you remember, only a little less punishing, so you don't have such a rough time. Between each game is a story section, where you are treated to some absolutely amazing pixel art. The developers did an excellent job of making it feel like each part of this game could have been developed in the 80s or 90s. And hey, it has great music to boot. It's not very long, less than a couple of hours, and it's not especially deep. But if you ever just feel like a quick nostalgia trip, 1980X certainly does the trick. Death's Gambit is the answer to the question, how close can we make this to being a 2D version of Dark Souls without copyright infringement? The answer is very damn close. You start off choosing a class and a gift in a very familiar looking interface. One of the gifts is even a pendant that has no effect. Health and stamina look and act very similar. You level up stats in a very similar way. You have limited healing items that regenerate along with monsters when you rest. There's a dragon that won't stop breathing fire on this area that you want to cross. There's even a shiny lizard that runs away from you and drops equipment upgrade materials. It's very Dark Souls. There are a few uniquities though, like you have a horse you can call in certain spots. This can be used to travel quickly, jump over large gaps, and destroy anyone in your path. Death also has a different punishment in this game. Rather than lose your money where you died, you lose one of your healing items. If you want it back, you have to make your way over there again, or pay at a resting spot to recover your lost item. You can also leave any number of your healing items behind at rest spots to give yourself a significant damage boost, adding a nice risk-reward system for people who don't believe in Sunny D. You also have abilities which cost ability points to use. You'll gain points from attacking or doing an action specific to your class, such as dodging attacks for the Assassin class. Earn enough and you can unleash a powerful ability, which will then go on a cooldown for a bit. You can also find books related to different bosses in the game, which will grant you a damage bonus to those bosses. I love the idea that you can do more damage to an enemy due to your character knowing more about them. This one is fun. And if you feel like attacking in Dark Souls feels a little too sluggish and deliberate, it feels a lot faster and fluid here. If you're down for a 2D Souls-like Metroidvania, this feels like a great pick for this month. If terms like Souls-like and Metroidvania make you want to throw up, Death's Gambit probably isn't going to change your mind.
Turok Dinosaur Hunter is the 2015 remastered take on the 1997 Nintendo 64 classic. Turok is a classic first-person shooter that puts players in control of the titular hero on his quest to kill soldiers, monsters, and of course dinosaurs on his way to stop the campaigner from crafting the super-powerful Chronoscepter and presumably doing something evil with it. Turok is about as classic as a console FPS gets, so the story is simplistic at best. There's no dialogue and very little in the way of story text, with the game requiring you to either be familiar with the comics that the game is based on, or reading the manual that came with the Nintendo 64 version. The gameplay is, well, it's not great. Sure, using a mouse and keyboard or a modern controller makes playing the game easier than it was on the N64, but this is still a shooter from the N64 era. You'll be running around, shooting enemies, collecting keys, hitting switches, and progressing through 8 different levels. Levels are pretty open-ended when compared to contemporary games from the time like GoldenEye, and exploring the side paths and secret portals can lead to new guns and power-ups, but they're still fairly linear overall. The game only offers a simple map that you can have overlay the screen while you play, so it's pretty easy to get lost if you aren't paying attention. Really though, none of that is all that important. You know what you're getting into with Turok, and this remaster isn't trying to pretend it's anything more than it is, which is a game from 1997 with some extra polish on it. If you didn't play the original, and have no nostalgia for that era of games, this isn't going to do anything to really grab your interest. However, if you're like me and played the original growing up, or can enjoy a good classic shooter for what it is, Turok Dinosaur Hunter is still a lot of fun. Typing in a few cheat codes, turning on Big Head mode, and blasting through enemies with infinite ammo is just as much fun now as it was in 1997.
Exapunks is a programming and puzzle hacking game from the maker of Shenzhen.io. This time around, you are doing hacking jobs to pay for medicine you need to take every day to stay alive. I won't say this game is super easy, but it's a lot easier than Shenzhen in my opinion. You're limited to working with these little robots called X's. So immediately, you're eliminating a ton of choices on what parts to use and figuring out how each of those work. You also get to see the physical layout of each level, and visualizing what you're doing helps a ton. Just like Shenzhen, you get a big manual that gives you just enough information to get by, but also requires you to experiment around a bit to figure things out. If you liked the idea of Shenzhen but found it to be just too hard, Exapunks is worth trying, and I'm having an easier time recommending this game to more people. That said, it's still assembly programming, and I know a lot of people are not going to be interested in a game like that. I for one love it, and I'm having a hard time stopping whenever I boot it up. Battle Chasers Nightwar is a turn-based RPG based on a comic book of the same name. It's, a turn-based RPG. You and your enemies take turns in battle until one side is totally dead, you gain experience to level up, and you find and buy better equipment for yourself. Okay, so there are abilities as well, and I will say, the abilities all have good situational use with lots of options for any given situation you're in. Abilities consume mana, but hitting enemies with your regular attacks generates overcharge, which acts like free extra temporary mana that goes away at the end of the battle. I like overcharge, a lot. It encourages you to pace yourself in battle, instead of just using your strongest attack every time, or only using regular attacks and saving all your mana for the boss. My issue with overcharge is that abilities take some time to use, and many times I found myself either killing the enemy too quickly with my other characters before I could see an ability go off, or having all my characters defend while waiting so I could get a free heal without losing my overdrive from the battle ending. The system really shines in boss battles though. Speaking of boss battles, I fought this wagon with spikes on it. Hitting it did damage to me as well, so I started using ranged attacks, and wow. Hitting it with ranged attacks also hurt me. That's pretty dumb. Outside of combat, there's basically two modes of traversal: the world map and dungeons. On the world map, you follow set paths. You can see exactly where enemies are, and passing an enemy's space triggers a fight. Pro tip, there's a ton of them, so if you don't like the combat, you're gonna have a real bad time here. When you go into a dungeon, it swaps to a free roam isometric mode, with enemies moving around on the field and responding to your presence. Your characters each have abilities they can use inside dungeons, like your robot can heal the whole party, but these abilities have limited uses, and I didn't find a way to restore them yet, so be careful with them. Dungeons are randomized, and beating them will grant you a chest, with better rewards at higher difficulties. Generally, I find people are either into turn-based combat or completely turned off by it. I tend to find myself somewhat in the middle, enjoying it in some games, but mildly disliking it overall. I thought this game was fine, and the overcharge system adds a nice little twist. But if combat looks tedious to you, I would steer clear.
Fell Seal: Arbiter's Mark is a turn-based tactical RPG by developer Six Eyes Studios. The story for Fell Seal begins with a group of heroes long ago who slayed a legendary beast that threatened the world. Once they defeated the beast, the heroes were granted the gift of immortality and began to watch over the world. In order to help with this task, they created the Arbiters, a group of Judge Dredd-esque law enforcement officers who serve as judge, jury, and executioner. As time has gone on, the Arbiters have gotten more corrupt in many areas, with nobles paying for law exemption and to turn a few blind eyes. Players control a group of Arbiters with a bright-eyed new recruit who seem to be one of the few non-corrupt Arbiters left. Soon, a once-per-century ritual of the Immortals begins, and our group is set out on a journey of justice and vengeance. Gameplay is tactical and turn-based, much like Final Fantasy Tactics or Fire Emblem. You'll be deploying units before battle, then moving them around on a grid and using different attacks and abilities on a multi-leveled and obstacle-laden battlefield. In between fights, you'll be moving your group around a world map, getting into encounters, recruiting new characters, buying supplies, and engaging in story events. Fell Seal also features an in-depth job system, allowing you to learn new abilities associated with your job as you level up. Learn enough abilities and you'll start unlocking new jobs, complete with a whole new set of skills for you to learn. The mark of a good tactical RPG, for me, is in the job system, and from what I can tell so far, Fell Seal seems like it has all the makings of a great job system. The gameplay isn't anything special or unique, but as a tactical RPG, it's serviceable. You'll need to keep an eye on elevation, obstacles, reinforcements showing up, and other events that might happen during battle. The story has some interesting ideas, although the art style isn't anything to write home about, and the lack of voice acting will leave you with lots of reading in between encounters. As far as tactical RPGs go, Fell Seal seems like a solid entry in that genre. I'm not the biggest fan of that genre, but there's enough story hooks and gameplay elements that have piqued my interest, and fans of the genre will definitely want to pick this one up. F1 2019 is a Formula 1 racing sim game by developer Codemasters. Players will race around real-world tracks using real Formula 1 cars in a varied difficulty racing simulation that should feel familiar to fans of series like Forza or Codemasters' other racing series Dirt. F1 2019 features a variety of difficulty sliders, allowing players to adjust each of the game's systems to their desired level of difficulty. These difficulty options are what make the Codemasters series some of the most approachable racing sims available, and it's great to see them on display in F1 2019 as well. As someone who knows nothing about Formula 1 racing other than that the cars go really fast, I wasn't even aware that this series existed, let alone had any interest in playing it. However, F1 2019 won me over quick with its inclusion of a fully fledged career mode. Players will take control of a driver, rising through the ranks of F2 racing with their chosen team in an effort to make it up to Formula 1. You have a teammate that serves as a mentor to the player, as well as a rival driver from another team who seems to have it out for you. In between races, drama develops as the rivalries start to heat up, and players are even given a chance to spice things up themselves during post-race interviews. You'll be asked questions by the interviewer and given a variety of options to choose from in response. These options range from applauding the efforts of your team and raising your sportsmanship, to bragging about your own skills and abilities and raising your showmanship. I haven't played too much of the story so far, so I'm not sure how good the actual writing is overall, but it's just nice to see some effort being put into a career mode for a simulation racing game. Often the goal for these games is just to get better at racing, and putting some faces and drama to go alongside it is a great feature. F1 2019 is a great simulation racing game, and even if it's not the kind of game you usually enjoy, the accessibility features as well as a full career mode go a long way towards enticing newcomers to the genre to give it a chance. I'll definitely be putting a lot more time into F1 2019. Planet Coaster is a theme park management sim from developer Frontier Games. Planet Coaster is the successor to the Roller Coaster Tycoon series, and plays much the same as those previous games. Players are tasked with managing a theme park. You can place pre-built rides, restaurants, attractions, entertainment, and other buildings to suit your guests' needs. Players will need to maintain the attractiveness of their park, keep their guests happy, and keep expanding the park to reach their goals. What those goals are depend on the mode you're playing. Career mode offers pre-built or partially built parks, with the general goal of expanding and improving on them. Players can also create custom scenarios with specific starting points and goals, or load any number of custom scenarios through the Steam Workshop. You can also just jump into sandbox mode with unlimited money and just go crazy constructing a roller coaster that's guaranteed to kill anyone who rides it. Or just build a theme park that doesn't kill people, if you're boring. I put a lot of time into Roller Coaster Tycoon series growing up, and Planet Coaster definitely feels like one of those games. However, figuring out what you can do and how is more of a matter of trial and error than anything else. There are no in-game tutorials, with players instead being presented with a link to a YouTube playlist of short and unhelpful videos. Planet Coaster isn't too difficult to figure out from a surface level, but it's clear there's a lot of systems and mechanics all lying underneath the surface, with no clear way of deciphering how to use them. If all you want to do is go into sandbox mode and design some radical coasters and build a theme park with no worries or restrictions, Planet Coaster has a lot to offer. However, it's missing a lot of quality of life improvements that I would expect from a company that's made a lot of theme park management games. The big picture looks great, but Planet Coaster really fails to live up to its reputation when it comes to the little details, and it ends up being a rather frustrating but still somewhat enjoyable experience. My Friend Pedro is a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up from developer Dead Toast Entertainment. Players take control of an unnamed protagonist, possibly with amnesia and definitely mostly silent, who is accompanied by a floating, talking banana. That's about as sane as this game gets. Soon, players are spinning, jumping, and diving in slow motion while shooting at bad guys in multiple directions. Oh, and sometimes you're on a skateboard, or on a motorcycle, or diving from a skyscraper. My Friend Pedro is jam-packed with style from start to finish. The game starts you off nice and slow, as you learn the basics of wall jumping, rolling, dodge spinning, and shooting. Before long, it just starts throwing more and more wacky and over-the-top scenarios at you. You'll come across a group of enemies above you, with a convenient gas can located below them. Sure, you can just climb up and shoot them, but the game is giving you all the tools you need to look like an absolute badass as you kick the can straight up in the air, shoot it, and kill all the bad guys with one bullet and one explosion. Each level feels like it's broken down into individual set pieces from an action movie, full of different objects to kick at your enemies, signs to bounce bullets off of, ropes to swing from, and panes of glass to crash through. The story is serviceable, with the offbeat setting and sense of humor doing a lot of work to keep things going. The main draw here is the replayability. At the end of each level, players are ranked based on their performance and style points. Players are also given a short replay of one of their highest scoring moments from the stage, allowing you to save and export them as a video or even an animated GIF. The short level structure and well laid out set piece design of each level makes them highly replayable. Once you really start to find your groove and start spinning and diving your way through enemies with style, you'll find yourself wanting to revisit each level to try and pull off more and more stylish moves and kills in an attempt to hit the top of the leaderboards. My Friend Pedro isn't very long, maybe a few hours to get through the entire story from start to finish. If you're only going to play it once and be done, My Friend Pedro might not be what you're looking for. However, the game is incredibly fun and satisfying, and once you start to really get good at the gameplay, you'll find yourself wanting to play more just to see what kind of stylish moves you can pull off. If I didn't purchase it on day one, My Friend Pedro would be an obvious pickup for this month, and one I'll always come back to.
So overall, how was this bundle? There were a lot of strategy and RPG titles in here. There were some other genres mixed in, but I feel like a couple of titles here should have maybe been replaced. My Name is Pedro is a great game and a bit expensive for how short it is, so it's an excellent fit for being in a bundle. Exapunks was not on my radar at all, so I'm really glad I got to discover it here. Turok was a really odd pick, as it's a 23-year-old game that was republished on Steam 5 years ago, and it regularly goes on sale for as low as $5. If you wanted Turok by now, I think you'd have it. There were a few games in here to get excited about if you didn't already own them, but a lot of these were just fine.
This was a very niche bundle, with games like F1 2019 and AI War 2 being in genres that are going to drive a lot of people away. I'd also agree that Turok is a really weird choice to include. While I love that game, it just doesn't feel like it belongs in this bundle.
If you want to figure out how much your particular picks are worth, here's the retail price of each game. This is usually where we suggest what to pick and drop, but we've decided to change the format a bit. Everyone is so different, and no matter how much anyone loves or hates a game, there's simply no such thing as a definitive pick or drop that everyone should follow. So we've tried to add a little more information in the review section of each game about who's likely to enjoy each one, as well as who's likely to not enjoy, to try and help you make an informed decision about what games you want to pick out of the bundle. That said, we know some people also want to know what games we dropped, so we'll tell you what we dropped and why we dropped them. This month, I dropped My Friend Pedro and Turok because I already owned those two games, but if I didn't already own them, I think I would have dropped Niffelheim and either F1 2019 or AI War 2, simply because I'm not into any of those genres.
This month I also dropped My Friend Pedro and Turok, as I too already owned both of those games. If I would have needed to pick which to drop, I would have gone for Turok and probably Niffelheim. Turok goes on sale for dirt cheap, and is also a 20-year-old Nintendo 64 game, and Niffelheim just isn't my kind of game.
Finally, a huge thank you to Michael Slater and all our patrons over on Patreon. Your support means the world to us. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.